Maybe this year's rendition of the playoffs wasn't the best showcase of Marc Gasol's time as a Toronto Raptor, but nonetheless, how important was the big burrito to the Toronto Raptors winning the 2019 NBA championship? Let's get into it. Welcome to Amateur Hour Sports, everybody. Today we are talking about Marc Gasol's time as a Toronto Raptor and how important he was in that time to winning that 2019 NBA championship. We didn't spend a lot of time as a Toronto Raptor. It was about a season and a half after a big trade which completely reshaped the dynamic of the Toronto Raptors team, which allowed them to go and win that championship. But still, Marc Gasol has to be very much appreciated for his time as a Toronto Raptor, and we're always going to remember how drunk he got at the parade, how wild he got at the parade, because one of the most entertaining aspects of this guy's time in Toronto. But still, the trade, it happened a year and a half ago, like I said. It was Marc Gasol from Memphis, and we sent over to the Grizzlies Jonas Valanciunas, CJ Miles, DeLon Wright, and a future second-round pick. And it wasn't, as much of a monumental trade that required where were you then when it happened. But for this trade, I remember exactly what I was doing. And I remember clearly and vividly what I was thinking when this trade happened. And initially, I was shocked. This one came out of nowhere. There weren't really any rumors regarding the Marc Gasol coming to Toronto. We were just thinking we're going to have Jonas Valanciunas for another playoff run. But then all of a sudden, it flips. We get a new big. We lose a bit of depth, and we acquire Marc Gasol. And at the time, I was thinking maybe this wasn't the best trade. We gave up quite a bit in order to get Marc Gasol. But then as time wore on, and about an hour passed, I slowly started to realize the genius of this trade, because Marc Gasol does so many things that Jonas Valanciunas does not do on a basketball court. Marc Gasol can spread the floor much better than JV, and I no disrespect to JV. I love JV. I love his time as a Toronto Raptor, but Marc Gasol does things that JV could not do. Marc Gasol could be the facilitator in the high post that JV could not. Marc Gasol could D up opposition bigs to a great degree of effectiveness. JV really struggled to do that in his time with the Toronto Raptors. This can be highlighted by the series where we were the 1 seed, the Cleveland Cavaliers were the 4 seed, and we got swept. JV got outplayed by Tristan Thompson over the course of that series, and that is not good enough. We were not allowed to progress because any team with a great big seemed to get the better of us in the post, and it was largely in part to JV. I think Marc Gasol brought some elite interior defense that we needed. He brought the floor spacing that JV couldn't quite achieve, and he brought the facilitator aspect, the ability to pass the ball. And we lost CJ Miles, who, CJ kilometers wasn't really a necessary aspect of the Toronto Raptors organization at the time. Appreciate the years he gave us, but we didn't really need him for that title run. DeLon Wright was a third choice point guard, and going into the playoffs as Norman Powell was starting to ascend as a player, we didn't need DeLon Wright in the playoffs. He would not have touched the court other than garbage time. When we got rid of him, we signed Jeremy Lin, who acted as a third-choice point guard when needed, when guys like Fred VanVleet were injured in the regular season. As far as the playoffs, Jeremy Lin only came in during garbage time situations, so DeLon Wright wasn't very necessary. You can live without that second-round pick. JV, it sucked to get rid of, but Marc Gasol was a big upgrade to JV. Think about what would have happened in, let's start with the Orlando series, because they had a great big in Nikola Vucevic, but Marc Gasol D'd up Vucevic for that series. And sure, the Raptors probably would have won anyway, but would they have won as comfortably in 5 games? Probably not. Vucevic probably would have gotten the better of JV on many occasions, but Marc Gasol did not allow that to happen. And an even bigger example of this is going to the second round of the playoffs, the conference semifinals. We play one of the best bigs, if not the best, in the NBA. I would argue that he's the second best, Joel Embiid, the Philadelphia 76ers. And we know how Marc Gasol became Joel Embiid's father over the course of that series, because Joel Embiid was not on his game in a lot of those 7 games. There's probably one game where Joel Embiid took over, and sure, Joel Embiid was a little bit hurt, but Marc Gasol completely nullified certain aspects of Joel Embiid's game, which allowed the Raptors to just get that little edge and push on and As a result of Kawhi Leonard's buzzer beater, we move on in 7 games. But that's so much down to Marc Gasol's ability to play some elite defense on one of the NBA's most formidable bigs. We go to the conference finals, and sure, wasn't a formidable big in Brook Lopez, but the way the Raptors played defense, how they had Kawhi Leonard funnel Giannis into a paint that was crowded by the likes of Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, who are great interior defenders, and that also allowed the Raptors to win that series. Marc Gasol was absolutely instrumental to the Toronto Raptors as they went to push on for that NBA championship. Just maybe they don't even get there if they don't even make that trade. And sure, we look back, Marc Gasol's gone. JV's still a big contributor in the NBA. DeLon Wright is, contributing decent minutes to Dallas after he went there in free agency. So, would it be nice to have those guys? Well, sure. But if I could go back and make that exact same trade again, I absolutely 100% would do that trade, because I think when a market like the Toronto Raptors, when they go and win an NBA championship, with only one superstar, it kind of reminds me of the Detroit Pistons team that won the NBA championship, not for, the elite defense, but just not having that star power, but still being able to win the championship. For those teams, everything that needed to happen for them to win a championship had to happen. Everything that did happen needed to happen, or else that championship doesn't happen. There's just all these things have to line up in a certain way for them to go and triumph, and that is exactly what happened for the Toronto Raptors. I think if any move, trade, signing doesn't happen for the Toronto Raptors that season, I don't think that they go on and win that championship. I think everything happened exactly as it needed to for the Raptors. And the Gasol trade was a big thing that needed to happen. And absolutely, that Marc Gasol acquisition was a key acquisition for the Toronto Raptors to be able to combat teams with such formidable interior play that we lack the defensive capabilities to play against, because the Raptors had a lot of struggles up until that season. We got to one conference final where we had a great series, but unfortunately we lost in 6 to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and we get swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second round despite the Toronto Raptors being the 1 seed. There's a lot of heartbreak for Toronto Raptors in the playoffs, and Marc Gasol's ability, it's not just him obviously, but he was part of the reason why the Raptors overcame such a stigma and went on to win that NBA championship. And Marc Gasol, he's going to get his jersey retired in Memphis after getting drafted by the Lakers and getting moved immediately in a trade involving his brother. So Marc Gasol is going to get his jersey retired in Memphis. And, truthfully, he said he didn't want to leave Memphis at the time. When the trade happened, he was a bit upset that he had to leave Memphis. But after he hoisted up that Larry O.B., he had no more regrets. He said, whoever didn't listen to me and made that trade go through, I thank you, because now Marc Gasol is an NBA champion and he absolutely deserved that title. His ability as a player, did drop off in terms of his offense when he went to Toronto. He was averaging 13 to 15 points per game in Memphis, getting more minutes, getting more touches on the interior, and his point per game significantly dropped when he went to the Raptors for that first season. It went from 13.6 points per game to 9.1 with the Toronto Raptors, and then it went to 7.5 this most recent season. But that is because they had this scheme for the way they wanted to deploy Marc Gasol, just to sit in the high post and be the facilitator on offense, like I was saying earlier. He didn't need to be the threat on offense for a team like Memphis, who were a lot worse than the Toronto Raptors, a team that were not fighting for a playoff spot at the time. He needed a different role, and it was a role that was specifically designed for him, that the Raptors needed in order to unlock the capabilities of a lot of the other players on the team. So, sure, he regressed a little bit when you look at it on paper, but in game, what he offered the Toronto Raptors, those little hidden things that maybe the stats don't quite quantify, those little things were what made him so important to the Toronto Raptors. And, that trade looks really good now, and maybe it didn't at the time, but that trade was monumental for the Raptors being able to win the championship. I wish Marc Gasol all the best in any future endeavor. It looks like he's going to go back to Spain and play for Barcelona, I think it is. Going to leave the NBA having been a Defensive Player of the Year, having been an NBA champion. He's a 2-time World Cup of basketball winner. This guy has had an illustrious career, and, wish we could have given him a better send-off. I wish he played better in the playoffs. He really struggled in the playoffs. He really struggled in the playoffs this year. And it's not the best way for him to leave off on, but, he'll be happy with what he's achieved in the NBA. The Raptors fans will be very grateful for what he's brought. I've seen on Twitter everybody really celebrating the career of Marc Gasol as a Toronto Raptor, even if it was very short-lived. He deserves all the praise he gets. He was an elite player in his time and a great guy to have for the Toronto Raptors organization. So that wraps up this video. If you could go back to that trade, would you make it again? Do you think the Raptors would have been able to win a championship if it was Jonas Valanciunas at the 5 spot? Personally, I say absolutely not, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. But that wraps up this video. Please like the video if you like, and subscribe to Amateur Sports for more content just like this. 4 videos a week pertaining to the NBA with a focus on the Toronto Raptors. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell as well to stay up to date with all that content. At the end of the day, I believe what I say. If you disagree, that is okay. We will see you again next time.